Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there! Welcome to today's episode of Next Level Play Therapy. So if you're watching on the live broadcast, that's awesome. Join in the conversation today. If you're watching on the replay, welcome. And for those of you listening to the podcast, welcome to today's episode. And today's episode, I want to talk about something that I noticed really keeps play therapists from becoming the amazing helper healer that you want to be to make a difference in the lives of your clients. And that is something that we don't talk about very much, but over the years that I have been providing play therapy consultation and training, this is something that I've noticed that really keeps people from accomplishing the level of skill that they want to accomplish. And then when I sat back and thought about it, I thought, oh, okay, well, I had this too, especially when I got started. And I had a conversation with my play therapy supervisor at the time. I feel like a big giant fraud, and I feel like I'm stealing people's money. And so that was the beginning of having a conversation about I wasn't really as terrible as I thought I was, but because I felt that way, it undermined my effectiveness. So to me, I think it's a good idea to have a conversation about imposter syndrome. And before we have that conversation about imposter syndrome today, I want to make a disclosure. If you've been listening to some of my previous episodes, the likelihood that I have dogs is very high. And where are they? Luna's right here. Come here. So Luna likes to dig when she's in the office with me. So if you hear some scratching and moaning behind me, please know that nothing weird is going on behind there. I'm looking for my other dog. Oh, Lily's right behind me. So Lily sometimes digs as well. Luna Luna always digs when she's in here. So they like to hang out with me in my office here, which means they're going to be digging. So if you hear any weird sounds behind you, just know that it's my dog, Luna, and my other dog, Lily. So, alrighty, so let's get started. I would love to know who's here. So if you're watching on the live episode, the live broadcast, I would love to know who's here. Post your name in the comments. Where are you from? What play therapy or expressive arts modality do you use? What population do you work with? If you have questions today or even comments, I invite you to post those comments. The only thing that I ask is, because this is a public format, I will ask that you not talk about specific clients just for privacy reasons. But feel free to go ahead and comment and post and ask questions about kind of more general issues. So today's topic is imposter syndrome, and how do you know you have imposter syndrome? And more importantly, why does it matter if you don't recognize it? And then when you do recognize it, what can you do about it? And that is what we are going to talk about today. So let's get started. All righty. So first and foremost, if you haven't been listening to some of my previous episodes, you might not have heard me talk about this. Sometimes I will talk about it. If you want to listen to some of my previous episodes, feel free to go back and do that. If you are on Instagram, you could probably find some of my more recent episodes on my grid. Anytime I have a guest, though, they won't be on Instagram. If you're in my Facebook group, which is called Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground, and that Facebook group is for child and adolescent therapists who are using play therapy and expressive arts. So if you're interested in that group and you're on Facebook, feel free to pop over there and join. You do have to answer all of the questions in order to be admitted in the group. If you're watching on LinkedIn, it's kind of hard to find past episodes. My suggestion is to pop over to my YouTube channel. I also live stream simultaneously onto my YouTube channel, and that is Cathi Spooner, Renewing Hearts Training. If you click on the live tab, you can see all the previous live stream episodes. You'll also find my podcast on there, Next Level Play Therapy Podcast. Just click on the podcast tab, or you can listen to podcasts anytime, anywhere you listen to podcasts for the most part. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is basically feeling like you don't have the knowledge and abilities to provide good, effective play therapy services. So we're talking about imposter syndrome as it relates to play therapy. Imposter syndrome is not unique to play therapists. I would say it is a human condition that at some point pretty much most of us struggle with. And I would say all of us, but there may be that occasional person. But for the most part, I would say 99.9% of us experience imposter syndrome at some point in our journey, at some point in our life, at some point of our professional development. And basically, the other part that makes it terrifying, I'll say terrifying because it can be, is so that we're feeling like a big giant fraud, like we don't know what we're doing, and then we worry we're going to be exposed. We're going to be exposed to the fact that we're a fraud, despite the fact that the evidence doesn't suggest it. The evidence is that your clients are actually making progress. They're actually engaged, and you're doing some things right. Like if you're new in your play therapy journey, the likelihood you still have things to learn is pretty high, which is why you go to trainings and you get good consultation. Coming under the mentorship of an experienced play therapist to help guide you along the way is a really important part of becoming a competent play therapist. And so the likelihood that you are as terrible as you think you are is pretty darn slim, especially if you have somebody that you're working with, a consultant or a supervisor, and you're going to the trainings, then you actually do know things and you're building your confidence, learning how to be more proficient with them. The thing about imposter syndrome, let's have this discussion about the elephant in the room, which is imposter syndrome is pretty much rooted in a tendency towards perfectionism and having a sense of insecurity. Most of us have some insecurity about something. There's the big secret nobody talks about. We all feel insecure at times, and some of us feel more insecure than others. We feel insecure if we're just beginning to learn new skills because we're not real confident in our skills. So, of course, there's going to be some insecurity. If you struggle with anxiety by, I would call your default mode, then you're probably going to struggle with some pretty hefty imposter syndrome until you begin to gain some confidence about that. So most play therapists will experience imposter syndrome, especially when you're new to play therapy because you're just learning it. So how do you know if you have imposter syndrome? The likelihood you've started to figure it out by now, because it's probably starting to resonate with you, is pretty high. And I'm going to go over some signs and symptoms because it's really important for you to recognize that you're struggling with imposter syndrome. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and why that's important. So, some signs that you are struggling with imposter syndrome are that you are likely feeling anxious and overwhelmed about how to help your clients. You have thoughts that you're a fraud and you don't have the skills and abilities to be a play therapist. And here's the key. This probably happens. The likelihood that your imposter syndrome shows up with your clients is probably pretty good. The likelihood that your imposter syndrome shows up when you're working with parents and having conversations with parents is very high. So what happens, here's a couple of things. What happens, here's another way you can recognize. I'll get to the why it matters. Another way you can identify if you are experiencing imposter syndrome is that you find yourself avoiding conversations with parents because you secretly fear that they'll know that you're doing a terrible job. So you don't really pursue them when they don't want to schedule any parent sessions. You're glad when they cancel their parent session. You are glad when they don't call you because you're worried about what you're going to say. You find yourself, here's another sign, you find yourself overcompensating and by not requiring them to attend the parent sessions or consultation sessions with you on a regular basis. That's the key. And instead, you kind of avoid them doing some email conversations or text conversations, maybe a few phone calls here and there, and you hope you don't have to stay on the phone very long. I'm not a big fan of doing therapy by email and text or by phone. And I'm not a big fan of that because then they don't come in. You don't have that incentive to have them come in or do the teletherapy sessions with you. And then that reduces your relationship building. It's really important to build that trust with parents. They need to trust you so that they can rely and trust what you're saying to them and the changes that you're requesting that they make. They need to trust you and you need to have that relationship with them. You're supporting caregivers as much as you are supporting your child clients. So when imposter syndrome kicks in, then you are not really engaging caregivers or parents as much as they need you to engage them, even if they don't necessarily understand that. Here's the reality. You're the expert. Whether or not you feel like an expert, you are the expert. I remember when I just got started in the play therapy, getting started really knowing what I was doing. And what I mean by that is when I started working with a play therapist consultant, she was my supervisor. And I remember having this conversation with her on a few occasions in which I felt like a fraud. I felt like parents were going to find out at any moment in time. And I was just so anxious about it all the time. And sometimes even avoided conversations with parents. And what she said to me is, well, you're the expert. And I will tell you, I remember when she said that to me, this is like 20 plus years later, I laughed out loud and said, yeah, I don't think so. And she walked me through exactly why, yes, I am the expert. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that The other way that you can tell if your imposter syndrome is kicking in is you begin to feel insecure about what you're doing in sessions with your clients, the children or the adolescents, and then you begin to throw any kind of activity, you change things up, you do different things because you start getting panicky that it's not working. And so I call it the spaghetti against the wall approach, where you just kind of throw activities together in the session and hope that it works because you're worried that your client's not making any progress. And it's because you're a big giant fraud. And at any day now, people are going to figure that out. That's another reason why it's really important to figure out when you are struggling with a little bit of imposter syndrome and feeling overwhelmed about what's going on with your clients. So now, what can you do about it? Hey, Carla. Carla says, love this special time. I love seeing, so Carla's on Instagram. Carla's been to some of my trainings. And Carla's doing some amazing things in Mexico using play therapists. And we are very like-minded in the fact that we both are passionate about involving parents. And Carla's doing some amazing things there in Mexico. So Carla says, love this special time. And I love seeing when you show up, Carla. That's awesome. So what do we do? What are some tips to overcoming imposter syndrome? First and foremost, you really need to recognize when your imposter syndrome has kicked in. Even experienced play therapists will struggle with imposter syndrome from time to time. We all make mistakes. The thing is, I think at this point in time, for experienced play therapists, we've gained some confidence that we know what we're doing. We've gained confidence using our play therapy model. We've seen the results and we begin to have that confidence. If you're new to play therapy, you're not quite there because you're learning, right? Nobody in the beginning is going to be an expert. It takes time and we learn from our mistakes. Well, even experienced play therapists make mistakes. I think one of the things we've learned as an experienced play therapist is that we know how to get out of it really quick, or we know how to make the adjustments. So first, recognize nobody's going to be perfect all the time. Nobody's perfect all the time. It's an impossible standard. Secondly, believe that you are the expert. You might have to radically accept this in the beginning, but believe and understand, for parents and for children, you are the expert. In the United States, you would have completed a master's degree in some kind of counseling field, maybe marriage and family therapy, maybe professional counseling, maybe clinical social work, maybe clinical psychology. So you had to have completed a master's degree program, or you're in your master's degree program now and you are learning the skills. Maybe you're even licensed at this point. You can't have gotten that far without knowing things. And you know more than your clients. They are working with therapists, kids. The likelihood the parents that you're working with have a master's degree and maybe even a license, or maybe a few years experience even in the counseling field, the likelihood they have that for them is pretty slim. So you already know more than they do. And that was the conversation that my play therapy supervisor consultant, that's the conversation she had with me 20 plus years ago. And the other thing is, learn a play therapy model and stick to it. Your play therapy model is what's going to guide you through all the phases of the change process. Your play therapy model is what's going to tell you how to engage with your clients, what to do it, how to do it in the sessions, and what that's going to look like at the different stages of play therapy. So that way, rather than throwing spaghetti against the wall with all of your activities when you get panicked, you're going to take a step back, take a breath, remind yourself that you know what you're doing, trust in the relationship that you've built. That's key. That relationship building is absolutely key. And then remember what your play therapy model is and how you go about applying that play therapy model. So stick with your play therapy model. Here's the thing. Your play therapy model is going to give you the language that you need when about what's going on in the treatment process, so that when you talk with parents, you're going to be able to communicate to them what's going on. Now, I don't give specifics about what's happening in the play therapy sessions. Parents don't necessarily, that's not necessarily what they want. What they want to know is, how is my child doing? And how do you know my child is doing well? And there's a way that you can talk about that without feeling like you're violating the privacy of your clients. So learning that play therapy model guides you through, shows you what to do at each stage of treatment. It's going to give you the language that you need to communicate that to parents and explain what you're doing and how you're understanding what's going on with their client, with their child. And then get good consultation and training to learn a specific play therapy model and how to apply it at different stages of treatment and what that's going to look like in each session. That's really the best way to overcome your imposter syndrome, because your imposter syndrome is rooted in your insecurity that you don't know what you're doing. And if you're just learning play therapy, there's some validity to that, right? Which is why you believe that big giant lie your brain is telling you, that you don't know what you're doing, because you're just learning something new. The thing is, if you get good training and consultation, then you have a more experienced person helping you through the learning process to be able to do that. And your play therapy model is going to help you understand what's going on in the session and how do you show up, what do you do it. That's going to help you overcome that imposter syndrome as well. First, though, you have to learn the models, which requires that you get some training. So that is it for today. We have a comment. Let me check out the comment. Oh, Tracy Phillip. Okay. Hey, Tracy. So Tracy, I'm going to brag on you a minute, Tracy. Tracy, what, like, I think it was 3 years ago now. It's 2024, probably 3.5 now. I took this video course to learn how to show up on video and use video to help people know what I'm doing. And oh my gosh, Tracy was the best video coach. I was so nervous. Talk about imposter syndrome, learning new things, learning how to do these live stream videos. My insecurity and perfectionism was off the chain. So now I use Tracy to do a lot of my other videos. So she's helping me do some other videos and that kind of thing. So that's awesome. All righty. Let me do a recap for today. So basically, imposter syndrome is your brain telling you that you aren't really good at what you're doing, providing play therapy, and you'll be exposed as a fraud at any moment. And all the world will know that you're a big giant fraud, which means you feel like you're failing your clients. And the likelihood that's true is not very high. It tends to be rooted in perfectionism and insecurity. We all struggle with imposter syndrome. I just shared how I felt like a big giant imposter. Oh my gosh, before I would go live, I would want to just throw up. And I did it anyway. And that's part of overcoming your imposter syndrome. You just have to work your way through it and figure out One, when it's happening, why it's happening, and then what are you going to do about it? Signs that you're struggling with imposter syndrome are that you're feeling anxious and overwhelmed about how to help your clients using play therapy. You're going to likely avoid meeting with parents, or find yourself over accommodating, doing things to please them, even though it's not very helpful. Sometimes it just makes matters worse. And you're going to try to please them so that they won't figure out that you're an imposter and pull their child from treatment. That's usually the worst fear. They're going to figure out, parents are going to figure out that I'm terrible at what I'm doing, and they're going to pull their child from treatment, even though the evidence doesn't suggest that. The evidence shows that the child is engaged, parents are engaged, there are some things that are working in your sessions. That's the evidence that you're not as terrible as you think you are. And the other thing that happens if you're feeling overwhelmed and like a big giant imposter feeling, and you're not doing a good job, then you start worrying, oh my gosh, my client's not making any progress. It's all my fault because I'm not a good play therapist. So then you start pulling out your play therapy books with all kinds of different ideas without any regard to what you're trying to accomplish in the session. And you start kind of throwing things together, hoping something will stick. And oftentimes it just slows things down or kind of makes them worse. So you want to take a step back. So here are some tips for overcoming imposter syndrome. First, it's a mindset shift. The likelihood you're as terrible as you think you are is pretty darn slim. You really need to believe in yourself. You have more skills than maybe you recognize that you have. Figure out what's getting activated. This is part of therapy. We're therapists. We do this all the time. Figure out what is going on in me and why is it happening. So one of the things you want to check in about is, am I experiencing imposter syndrome? Because that's going to get in the way of my effectiveness. That's why you want to recognize it. That's why you want to tell your brain to stop telling you lies. The way that you do that is a mindset shift. You are the expert. Whether or not you feel like an expert, you are an expert. You may be at varying levels of your expertise. You know more than your clients, most likely. So learning the play therapy model is really important, and getting good at it, which means that you don't want to give up so easily. You want to keep applying the model as you're learning it and applying it with your clients through all the stages of the play therapy process. That's the only way that you're going to really feel more confident in what you're doing, is really applying that model. Don't give up. Lean into it. What does the model say to do? How does it say to do it? And why am I doing it that way? That's going to help you trust the process. So we say that all the time in play therapy because we don't always know what's going on in the play session. Children use play for healing. We don't always know how they're using play because they're not articulating it to us like a 40-year-old adult explaining the innermost thoughts and their innermost struggles. Children do that through play. So leaning into your play therapy model and trusting the process and maintaining that strong therapeutic rapport is what's going to help guide you through that process and help you feel more confident about what you're doing. And so you want to make sure that you are using that play therapy model, because that's going to help you get through all the stages of the change process. Your play therapy model is also going to give you language to use with parents to explain what's going on. So in that way, it's really helpful as well. So that is it for today. If you're interested in finding some ways to work with me, then I have some courses online right now. They're self-paced courses. I call them the Getting Grounded series. So if you're just getting started in play therapy, or you really want to know more about play therapy, I have a course called Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Foundations, which really helps you understand and walks you through the process of understanding how play therapy is different than just pulling out games and toys. There's also some tips in there about how to talk to parents about what you're doing in the play therapy sessions, some ethics things to keep in mind if you're using teletherapy, some best practices about play therapy, as well as how to set up your playroom. So all the questions I usually get asked by new play therapists or new people wanting to learn play therapy, I made sure to put that in the course. How is play therapy? What are these therapeutic powers of play? The different theoretical models, why they're important. So all of those things. And then the other course I have is Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Case Conceptualization. One of the things I highly recommend if you really want to start challenging your imposter syndrome and start feeling more confident, stop feeling lost, in addition to getting good support and challenging your insecurities, understanding the importance of good case conceptualization. And what exactly is case conceptualization? It's a very fancy word, is going to be so helpful for you to identify what is going on with your client, what's underneath the roots of those problems, and why is this happening. Even if you're using child-centered play therapy, I still believe, or some other process-oriented training, play therapy model, having good case conceptualization by using that first session to do your very thorough, detailed questions, that very thorough psychosocial assessment, that forms the foundation of your case conceptualization. So even when you're using more process-oriented models, having that good case conceptualization helps you know how to engage parents, helps you know what's going on, helps you identify what needs to shift. Depending on your model will influence how you use that. The case conceptualization itself, I cannot, in my 30 plus years in the child and adolescent mental health field, one of the things that I've learned is good case conceptualization is really important. So I have a course on that, self-paced, walks you through the process, uses case examples, there's activities, there's workbooks, there's guides for you to walk that through with each of your clients. There's a guide about what questions to ask and why you need to ask them. That's one of the things I've noticed. Most play therapists don't go more detailed enough, which means you're going to miss really important information. And it's going to result usually in feeling lost and not knowing what to do. If your case conceptualization is pretty solid, then when you do get a little lost somewhere, usually in the middle of the change process, that's what you go back to. You adjust it as you need to, and it's a really important part of the process. And then I have two other courses in there: treatment planning. How do you take that case conceptualization and turn it into a treatment plan? Writing treatment plans, what to write in your treatment plans, and then also progress notes. So if you're interested in any of those, when you're ready to learn those skills, which I highly recommend, make sure you pop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com/courses. So it's Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training. Click on the courses page. The website is rhplaytherapytraining.com/courses. All right. And I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gain new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.